Hello and welcome this evening, and it's good to see you all. Thank you for joining us this evening. I know it's been a beautiful day today. Today we are talking about facing the crisis with innovative technologies to the rescue. So I just wanted to start really by giving you an idea about not so much about myself, but about what's made me research and look into these technologies and what's prompted me to make the decisions that we have made in the practice in order to utilise technology and artificial intelligence. So you can see there that I am an owner of a fully private practice and a mixed practice. And I suppose the point to take away from that really is that, of course, when COVID happened, we have now had a situation where we've got a fully private practice, no funding, and we've had to think about innovating to get around that. You'll also see from this slide that while owning two practices, I've been quite active in the British Orthodontic Society, and I like to work hard. I like to be busy, but a work-life balance is important to me as well. And so I work 4 days a week. I have 1 day off. I only do 2.5 days clinical contact with business development the rest of the time. And 3 days a week, I do the school run. So in our practice, it is about practice efficiencies. And that's not efficiencies from the perspective of fiscal efficiencies, but certainly efficiencies whereby we want to be utilising technology to the maximum. We review our processes, we review our protocols, and we always try and do things better where we can. And so when we were in this situation, when COVID hit us, of course, we had to make those changes. We had to respond to the crisis and we had to innovate. And so today, I'm going to be talking about 4 main factors: the social and economic impact of the crisis and how that will affect us as a business, the potential silver lining that we can find behind all of this, which seems much more apparent now than it certainly did 4, 5, 6 weeks ago, the 3 levels of reaction, or should I say the 3 stages that we can go through in order to innovate and implement these technologies in our practice, and also how we can use those long term to thrive beyond the COVID era and utilise those to make our practice even better than it is now. And so if we talk about the social and economic impact to start off with, of course, we cannot even begin to estimate the impact that COVID is going to have upon the economy and what that's going to mean to us. And we will probably feel the ramifications of this for many years to come. And so we know that it has already had an impact on society. All of us are remote working at some level or another. Very few people are actually within their businesses working. Online engagement has shot up. This is the new way to communicate. It was already a growing market, but suddenly Zoom is an everyday word that we use frequently across all generations, across all aspects of society. And we've all had a chance to reassess that work-life balance. We know it takes 14 days to create a new habit, and well, we're in week 7 now. And certainly we've been changing our habits, both personally and at work. We've looked at our lives, we've adopted and adapted new habits, both working and otherwise. And so I suppose what we'll all be thinking going forward is that when we are back in the new wide world, what will remain and what will become the new norm? So we know that certainly Zoom has become the new norm. It is the way to go. And of course, telemedicine and teledentistry has been so much more popular during this period of time. And certainly it has been a growing market, but suddenly it has become much more acceptable. It has completely changed the psyche of society to be able to utilise these innovations and make them work to our benefit. And I think certainly before, we were really worried about how our patients would perceive teledentistry. Certainly in our practice, our USP is very much based upon the rapport we create with the patients, the relationships we create with the patients. And of course, in orthodontics, when the average treatment lasts no less than 18 or 24 months by the time you put in active treatment and by the time using retainers, certainly my biggest fear when we moved to dental monitoring was that our patients would miss seeing us. And they would miss that rapport and all those things that we believed sold the value of how we looked after our patients and the customer support and service we offered. They would be lost. But certainly, more recently, market research platforms such as Dentalbox have shown that actually 78% of patients will start using teledentistry within the next 5 years. And we know that this is not just our field. Certainly GPs, doctors, the hospitals are doing outpatient appointments virtually. And so this has become the new normal. But we ask ourselves of who would it be beneficial to? And actually, the research shows quite interestingly that it would be beneficial to over 97% of us. And when they look at the specific groups that that would be beneficial to, it's interesting that the top group is working people, which is inevitably the biggest cohort that we probably have in private orthodontics in this country, adult orthodontics. The second highest group is children, which is our biggest cohort in NHS orthodontics. And certainly, of course, if we can access people with disabilities, it provides them with options that they possibly no longer had previously when it comes to physical visits to the surgery and being able to reduce those. It suddenly opens up a whole new world of medical possibilities for them. And so when we go back and we talk about the economy, we know that this is going to be a downward turn. We know that actually the economy is going to shrink. And so what we need to do is we need to be reactive to that. We can't just sit and wait for that to happen and wait to see what the ramifications of that will be in our practicing lives. And so wherever we look, we see that actually the downturn is going to hit lots of industries: factory output, merchandise, retail, major economies, and the general economic forecast is just down, down, down. But when researchers look at certain aspects of who will come out on top, certainly the things that we have to be mindful of are that businesses that use AI, so artificial intelligence, such as dental monitoring does, and using automation and relying on these sorts of technologies are the ones that can be more agile and more dynamic in this moving market. And so we have to look for the silver lining in these clouds. And these clouds that have come across us during the COVID crisis are dark, and they are heavy, and they bear upon us. They have a great weight upon us. And whilst we are at a stage now where we can see the light at the end of the tunnel, certainly 6 weeks ago when this first hit, we had to react to that. And so we certainly did look for that silver lining. But what is the silver lining? And I do like this slide because I think this is so true of everything that happens to us in life. Change is foisted upon us, but change only happens when the pain of staying the same is greater than the pain of change. And that is certainly what happened to us when we went into lockdown. We couldn't stay the same. We had no option but to change. And so we had to look in that dark cloud and find that lining. And so how did we change our mindsets in the mid-COVID world? When we were in a position where we had no clinical access, we had remote monitoring in place in the practice with dental monitoring, but not for all of our patients. We had to think about virtual appointments, and we had to think about how we were going to manage our time. When we had a reduced number of team members at work, we had furloughed some of our staff in both the practices. And so we had to think about how we were going to manage all of our patients with a reduced number of people available and with the new technologies that we could harness in order to make this most efficient. And of course, as we're coming out on the other side of that, we need to be thinking about how we can change our mindset in the post-COVID world as well. And that means delivering greater convenience to our patients. It is about maintaining profitability, of course, but it's about not giving up the control or compromising communication with our patients that we so worked hard to achieve, believing that that was one of our biggest USPs was, like I said before, the rapport that we build with our patients. And so I think there are things that we need to really seriously think about how we will return to the post-COVID world and how we will create that balance. And so I think these are the three main factors that have to be taken into account. I think firstly, and this was the hardest one for me, is disconnecting that idea that the quality of care that you are able to provide your patients is determined by the number of times that you can actually physically see them. And knowing as well that it is possible to start more cases and work not necessarily less, but differently in order to maximise the value of your team and the clinical space that we now have. And actually, I think it's really important to appreciate that patients will not necessarily be disappointed. that they're not seeing us more frequently. They don't want to see us, but what they love is us seeing them. And that's what monitoring allows us to do. It takes away the inconvenience of them coming for the appointments, but it provides them with more monitoring, more interaction, and more communication, but just in a different way. And so what we do know is that there are always lessons to be learned from the past. We know that in times of crisis, development happens, innovation happens, and progress happens. And that happens in society and it happens globally. And so I think we need to move with the times. And I think we can do that by making technology work for us, making telemedicine work for us in a dental field. And regardless of what we think of the founder of Amazon, I thought this was quite an interesting quote, which is that inevitably to be innovating, there is a chance that you will be misunderstood. And certainly that's what I thought the first time I heard about dental monitoring. As I've said before, we pride ourselves on having a beautiful practice. We pride ourselves on having an amazing team of people, funny, caring, humorous, kind team members that make patients feel welcome. We work really hard on our patient journey. We have coffee. Why would people not want to come and see us? And I think that's the barrier and the mindset change that we all have to make in order to be able to utilize these technologies and appreciate the value of them and not just instinctively see the barriers that they might create. And so I'm going to talk about the 3 levels of reaction, or I suppose you could draw that into 3 different phases of how you react to this post-COVID world and how we're going to use the technologies that dental monitoring offer us in order to move through that world. And so if we start off with the short-term solutions, this is what happened to us certainly once COVID impacted. Immediately, we are caught in a difficult position where the patients are frustrated because they cannot access us, and we are equally frustrated because we could not access and monitor their treatment. The practice was closed, we couldn't ask people to book new appointments, we had to cancel appointments, we were rescheduling appointments, and we were concerned that patients would become less motivated to complete their treatment, and that obviously the patients that needed urgent care, we didn't know how to address that. And so in order to mitigate that, we looked at different ways in order to be able to utilise the technology to communicate with our patients and maintain the levels of care that we are proud of. And so we introduced virtual consultations for new patients. We needed to maintain a revenue stream in the private practice. We needed to make sure that we were still there, we were still aware in the patient market. And whilst this is not for everybody, inevitably as society is polarised and some people are sitting at home and being paid 80% on a furlough rate and aren't really spending a lot, we appreciate there are other people in a very, very different position. But the people that have not previously had the time or the inclination, they're suddenly sitting at home, they're browsing through their phones, and they're thinking about all the things that they wanted to do. And we have had a huge reaction in the numbers of patients that have been seeking and inquiring about treatment since we've started using SmileMate. And I'll talk to you about what that is a little bit later as well. Through dental monitoring, we've managed to maintain the booked appointments that we have. And so what we've done instead is we've been using those as online checkups with patients and checking in with them, making sure we see how they're going, any problems that they've got. And we've been using that to maintain a strong degree of communication with ongoing patients. And I can show you some examples of that later as well. And so certainly when we talk about being resistant to new technology, we were using dental monitoring already. All our Invisalign patients are on dental monitoring. We were toying with the idea of putting our retainer patients on dental monitoring. So we were doing our retainers through remote monitoring. And we'd started putting some of our fixed patients on dental monitoring as well. But when we actually hit COVID and we had to go into lockdown, the majority of our patients, so the fixed appliance patients, were unmonitored. And I resisted for, I'd say, about 3 weeks. I thought we could ask them to just send their photos in, we could just manage it some which way or how. And actually, it just didn't work. And so finally, I bit the bullet. And by week 3, I contacted Gemma, our DM rep, and sort of asked her what to do. And actually, it's so simple. So If you follow number 3 in this pointer, I know I'm jumping around, all we did was we downloaded all of our patients from our software system, exported all the fields that were needed, allocated to them which kind of brace type they're on, labial, lingual, whichever one it was, single arch, dual arch, and we were able to get them uploaded within a day, and suddenly we had access to all of our patients, we had access to monitoring them, and we could keep an eye on their patients and communicate with them. I'm just going to show you a quick video about how this works and what the LIGHT protocol is, as it's called in dental monitoring.
There is a new type of monitoring plan available called Photo Monitoring Lite that is designed to help you monitor your patients remotely. As there are no protocols or automated messages in this mode, you'll need to review and self-assess all patient scans individually. To get started, from the patient's profile, click on New Actions, Start Monitoring, and choose Photo Monitoring Lite as the monitoring plan. Choose the treatment type and activate the patient as per usual. On the Photo Monitoring Lite plan, patients are fixed at a 2-week scan interval. This cannot be changed, however, you can request an immediate scan at any time through the patient card. Just click on New Actions and ask for an immediate scan. When your patient completes their scan, the results will be available in your notification center. You can review the scan by clicking on the patient's name. This will take you to their profile, where you will see a gallery of their scans. You can click through the different views and compare them to previous scans. If you wish to send any of the scan photos to your patient with an annotation, select the photo and click Send with a note. Here you can draw on the picture to indicate any areas that need attention. You can also add a comment to your patient if you wish. The notification center is also where you will see any direct messages sent to you by the patient. You can reply to their message directly from the notification center. If you want to send a message to your patient outside of a reply, you can do so through their patient profile by clicking the New Action button and then Send a Message to Patient.
So that gives you an idea. It's a bit of a whistle-stop tour, but I will go into that in a little bit more detail. But you can see how the portal is just so easy to use and so clear, and the quality of the images that you're getting of your patient's teeth are far outweigh the sort of idea that we had before. And this is the sort of thing that we were doing before, where we were sending patients a PDF. We were asking them to use a couple of pairs of spoons to take photographs of their teeth. And the images that we were getting were full of cheeks and lips. And so, okay, we thought, right, well, we'll just send them some of these sort of cheap, disposable cheek retractors. But still, it's just about having a portal, and it's about having all those images in one go and one area. And also remember as well, when we didn't have many staff working, we can't have lots and lots of patients emailing us photos and trying to find the time to upload those onto our software system. It just made more sense to just accept all of these in one portal and be able to look at them easily, more clearly, accessible anywhere on a cloud. And so when we talk about the portal, you can see that this is how it would look. I've taken out the patient's name, hence the big white columns on the left-hand side. But it very easily tells you when they've taken their scans, what brace types they're wearing, and when their latest scan was as well. So when you look at the light option in dental monitoring, called Photo Monitoring Lite, this is the kind of imagery that you will get. So it's just simple photographs of the patient's teeth in lots of different areas, even if patient's taken pictures just with their fingers, but you can see they're a lot clearer than they possibly could be. And you can see where you can use the screen to send the notes and where you can liaise with the patients directly. When you use dental monitoring, you get this sort of scenario. So in the grey box, you get an automated system that uses the AI to look at the teeth, to look at the aligner fit, and you can see where it's showing that there's a slight unseat or one tooth, the 3-3. It tells you that we've set up our protocols, so you are able to customize this completely to your own working balance to decide what you will tolerate, not tolerate as poor fits, poor hygiene, and at what point you need to be engaging the patients and getting them back into the practice. And so in this scenario, you can see that the patient was sent a message to ask them to remain on their current aligners, and that the simplistic part of the message was that they've got what we call a no-go, so they don't move on to their next set, they've got a slight unseat, and they've been advised to use their chewies a little bit more. And so when you have a patient who's been routinely monitored, you can see across the top of the screen, there's a timeline, and the green circles show us all the times the patient has taken a scan of their teeth and the aligner's been fitting well, the treatment is suitable, and they are able to progress quite seamlessly through their treatment with very few hiccups at all. And you can click on any of those circles and it will take you back to that scan, so you can compare it to the current scan where you're at now. You can also take a look at those in all angles. You can see there's a frontal shot, left and right buckles, with aligners in, with aligners out. If occasionally you get what's called the no-go, so things aren't quite right, you can see where you get a red square. And these areas are showing you where particular areas are not going ahead with treatment as you would wish them to. So these no-goes detect early problems much more clearly than it would be if you were waiting for a 10-week, 8-week interval until you see your patients again. And so sometimes it's simply a case of them wearing their aligners for 2 or 3 more days until actually the aligner has expressed all the movements that we want to see, and the patient is then ready to move on. In the aligner systems with dental monitoring, these are the sorts of things that you can be looking for it to be able to notify you of. So it will tell you if a patient has a missing attachment or auxiliaries. It can tell you if the aligners are cracked or if they're split anywhere. It points out poor oral hygiene. And actually the technology is so sensitive that you would be amazed what it can see, even towards the buccal aspects of the teeth, where you would think that it wouldn't be that clear to actually notice whether patients had got their attachments on or off. And then it's about creating those balanced protocols to alert you at the appropriate times, but to also allow the patient to keep moving on throughout their treatment so that the treatment is progressing in a timely manner. And so just to show you in a little bit more detail the features that were shown in that video previously, so this is the one that most clinicians seem to like the most, is this concept whereby we can take one of the pictures that the patient has sent in to us and we can annotate it. And so we can tell them, the patients, exactly what we're trying to say to them. So in this picture, for example, there's a slight unseat on your aligner. Use your chewy particularly in that area. There is an attachment missing on your back tooth there. We know that next time you come in, we're going to maybe need to order a new aligner template and glue that on for you. You've got a noticeable unseat in one area, so we know that we might potentially need to bring you back in for a refinement, or we might need to readdress that. And this is also possible to be used on the fixed appliance patients. So you can see at the back there, there's a wire that's been disengaged, and this has been no end of use for the time that we've been on lockdown, because we can talk to those patients and we can show them how to reinsert that back into their tube, take them out of discomfort, and make their treatment progress as it should do. Poor oral hygiene. This is can you imagine not seeing a patient for the entirety of lockdown, and this is what was going on without your knowledge while they were unmonitored, and you'd get them back into the clinic in whatever it will be, 8-10 weeks time, and all that demon that would be occurring underneath the fixed brace. At least this way, we can advise patients of the treatment, we can do a Zoom call, we can do an OH review if we need to, and we can make sure that we are minimising the risks to their treatment as much as we possibly can in the time that we are not able to see them in clinic. And same again, where a patient has had a bracket that's come off, we're able to advise them how to take the elastic off the bracket and remove the bracket in its entirety to make themselves more comfortable. And then we talked earlier as well about maintaining the communication with our patients. And so this is a patient who I'd sent annotated photograph to, and I was trying to explain to her how to wear the elastics. Now, of course, she sent me a query back saying, I just wanted to check, am I right in thinking it's supposed to be this way or that way? But actually, this is somebody who just emailed in on Tuesday, and perfect timing, because look at this. She said, I think this app is a great idea for yourself and your team to monitor patients' progress, and I'm glad to hear that there are still staff available to help send out the bands. Now, that's the kind of communication and the customer care that we pride ourselves on, that we now understand that we can still provide through dental monitoring, because, as I said before, the patients don't love to see us, but they love us seeing them. And this is exactly what we're doing. We're sending back personalised, bespoke messages based around the photographs that they're sending in to us. They know that we are looking. And this again is another response that I got back after I spoke to a patient about a little bit of tartar that was building up on his teeth. And he's acknowledged that. He knows that there's something that he needs to do about that. But he's also communicating with me that he has a concern. He's slightly concerned about one of the teeth that seems to be moving forward. But regardless of that, he is super pleased with the progress so far. That's a testimonial in itself through the dental monitoring. But not only that, he makes reference to, I hope you and your awesome family are well. He remembers the rapport that we created, the relationships that we've created all the time that he's been in the physical building and he has been present at his appointments. And we are carrying that through dental monitoring and through the communication that we are having with our patients. It is a new learning journey. We spent a lot of time as dentists learning to communicate directly with our patients, making eye contact, sitting at the same level as them, making sure we don't talk down to people. And so it's about taking those communication skills and putting those into words, putting them into written communication to make sure that those physical touch points that we had along the way of our patient journey, we added more value to those to create the rapport and the relationships that we built with our patients, but we're not losing those in the time that we are physically just not able to see them during the COVID crisis. So moving on, we talk about the medium-term reaction. So I suppose this is looking ahead at when we return and when we're able to come out of lockdown and when we can think about what we will be doing in that immediate post-COVID phase. And what we know about orthodontic practices is that it's going to have an impact not just on us, but also on our patients. And certainly we know that from the patient's perspective, certainly there might be fewer people seeking treatment because unemployment has increased. Of course, we've been fortunate and we've seen numbers of people still engaging and inquiring after our virtual consultations, but that won't necessarily last. Of course, there's going to be a fear for some people of actually coming into the practice. We've all got so used to being socially distanced that actually being in proximity to people is now something new that we've got to relearn and remind ourselves of being normal. I think the problem that we're going to have is certainly that everybody wants to be seen first. We have a whole cohort of hundreds of patients that all expect to be seen in the first week. And what I anticipate is that the photos that they're sending in to us will allow us to help to at least prioritise the patients that maybe have problems or breakages or concerns that need to be addressed in order of priority so that we can create some sort of order to decide how to get our patients back into the building. Of course, what we know as well is that there will be competition from local practices. There will be a slight downward race to the bottom while everyone has an offer on, trying to generate business again and trying to kickstart their practices. And of course, we know that there is an ever-growing direct-to-consumer competition. We also know that patients themselves will be limited for time. Certainly when they go back to work, their work will have its own time pressures whereby they need to be expected to stay in work for longer, maybe work longer hours, and the convenience of them coming for their appointments may not be as it was prior to the COVID crisis. When we look at it from an orthodontic point of view, we know that as well as the financial issues of controlling our overheads due to increased PPE and what have you, we will also have to accommodate regulations about decreased clinical volume, about creating social distancing, about potentially surgery rest time, and generally limiting face-to-face contact, certainly in the immediate post-COVID period, as much as we can. And I guess worst case scenario, we have to be aware that there might be another possible second wave and possible practice disruption that might come along with that. And so it's how do we get around these things and how do we make ourselves bulletproof for the future? And so I suppose there's some immediate actions that we can certainly take in the time when we go back so that we are dealing with things as we can. And of course, we all know that a lot of this is going to be based around patient education, pre-appointment screening questionnaires, modifying the treatment procedures slightly, maybe limiting the aerosol generating procedures that we are providing, and also limiting the number of staff we have in the practice that will have then an effect on the number of patients that we can see. And of course, we're going to have to make physical changes to the office with the PPE, sneeze guards, and decreasing the number of surgery visits that we can ideally do so that we are limiting that face-to-face contact and we're only really bringing patients into the practice when we need to. And we're hopefully using the insights from the scans and the photographs that they've been sending to, like I said, prioritise the surgery visits, but also potentially to start writing prescriptions for the orthodontic therapist where possible, so that we can start to streamline the workflow that needs to happen when we get back. And this hopefully will start to help to compensate for the decreased staffing that we can have in the building at any one time and open up the opportunities for remote working so that staff are still working, but possibly just not in the physical building. And that increases the flexibility that we can provide for our team. And so, as well as that, opening up clinical time is going to be something that is going to be more and more important in a different way. So if you have downtime in your surgery because you've been doing AGP, why not do a virtual consultation and still be utilising your time to the maximum benefit, but not necessarily with people physically being in the building at a time where we are not able to simply manage that. And so finally, we think about the long-term options of what this might bring to us all. And I suppose the reality of this, and what we've talked about at the beginning, is that we know that some of these habits are here to stay. We know that we've all adapted to new technology, to Zoom, to virtual world. And so this is not just a band-aid to apply for today, to survive for today. What we want to be able to do is implement it into our long-term solutions to help to make this the new normal, so that we are utilising time, technology, staff, patient time to the maximum benefit, so that they are looking at what we are providing for them and seeing the value in what we're doing. And so I suppose what we want to be considering is, how will we get back to the new normal, the new abnormal? I don't know that it will ever be normal. Obviously, we're all hoping that eventually it will settle down to normal, but there certainly will be a new abnormal to start off with. And for me, certainly, remote monitoring with AI, certainly, so that the patients that we've had on the Invisalign, where the dental monitoring system is looking for the oral hygiene, the lost attachments, it's doing all that innovative stuff for us, has definitely been a game changer. We've also been using SmileMate since we've been into lockdown, something that we hadn't invested in before. And frankly, I wasn't necessarily thinking about that at all. I've been concerned about the monitoring of the current patients. I've been monitoring the patients on dental monitoring, thinking about putting new patients onto Photo Light, and it was sort of in for a penny, in for a pound. Let's try SmileMate as well. And frankly, it has been an absolute game changer too. And like I said, we have not dropped a beat, and certainly this month we have actually hit target as well, despite not even being in the building. And so it would appear that virtual consultations have become the new norm for us. And so this also brings us around to a different concept, which is when you own your appointment. So that is the concept of only having appointments only when needed, something that we call appointments on demand in our practice. But what this all needs is an evolution of thinking in every member of the team to take on this new change and take on the responsibilities and the roles that go along with that, and the change in behaviour. And that's what is required in order to create this virtual office. And what we need to do is create a new, a virtual patient journey, so to speak, so that we are not dropping a beat along the way, and we are adding value at every stage. And so how will we thrive in the new era of orthodontics? And when we talk about the virtual patient journey, what does that mean? And what does that mean to people? What does that mean to the patients? What does that mean to the team? And certainly, when we're thinking about virtual consultations, when we think about the new world and the responsibilities and the pressures that people will have upon themselves in order to go back to work themselves, fit their work-life balance in, they will be looking for quick and easy solutions before coming to the clinic. And so before, where we used to offer a free TCO, a TC consultation with our coordinator, and that would almost be the pre-qualifier to booking in with the orthodontist, what our TCs are now doing is they're doing that virtually. They're doing that face-to-face via Zoom. They're doing that over the phone. The patients are sending in their photographs. They get a bespoke report written back. We're giving them quotes over the phone, and I'll show you some examples of those as well. I'm going to start off just by giving you a quick little window into SmileMate so that you can have a look and see what that looks like.
We want to talk to you about remote assessment of your patient's dental, oral, and orthodontic conditions. Did you know a reliable solution for virtual consultation existed? No? Don't worry. We're here to help you get started. Welcome to SmileMate Virtual Consultation from Dental Monitoring. With SmileMate Virtual Consultation, dental professionals can conduct patient consults remotely. Get started at any time. Our self-service virtual onboarding will provide you with the resources you need to remotely assess your patients for the first time using our lighter, more simplified version of SmileMate. All at no cost to you. Here's how it works. Simply install our plugin on your practice website. This allows your patients to instantly create their user profile and take their own intraoral pictures on their smartphone. Next, a comprehensive, customized report, which can detect over 20 categories of oral health, is automatically generated and sent to you for review. Cool, right? You can qualify your patient's needs in their SmileMate portal, sharing their comprehensive report and your professional advice, as well as a booking link if an emergency appointment is needed. Plus, our embedded video conference feature allows you to speak to your patients directly on Vizio. SmileMate Virtual Consultation is here to help you remotely assess your patients with ease. Free until the end of May.
So that just gives you a quick look into the SmileMate world, and I will show you our dashboard as well so you can get an idea of how you can customise that for yourself. I'm going to skip over that video.
SmileMate Virtual Consultation
this is how this
allows
works.
remote patients to receive a dental assessment online. To begin accepting virtual consultations, all you need to do is to send the patient your unique personalised URL. You can find this on your SmileMate dashboard under Settings, Virtual Consultation, and look for the standard lead generation page. This URL can be opened on either a PC or a mobile device. Once the patient opens the URL, they will see a short description of how it works. They will need to enter their details in the form below to begin. Next, they'll be prompted to upload photos of their teeth, trying to match the reference photos as much as possible. There are 5 photos to be uploaded: front on, left side, right side, as well as a top and bottom occlusal photo. Once this is done, the patient can submit the photos for analysis. When the report is ready, you can access it from the Screenings menu on your SmileMate dashboard. Click on the patient name to view the report. A summary of the patient's condition is available, and you can view the photos of your patient's teeth directly. You can also review the observations as well as the treatment recommendations. You can modify the treatment recommendations easily through the Treatments Options tab before sharing the report with your patient. Through the Notifications tab, you can choose to receive an email when there is a new screening available. You can also choose to provide your patients with the ability to book an appointment with you directly from their screening report. If this is enabled, the patient will see an icon on their report where they can request an appointment.
So that gives you an idea. So if I show you our dashboard, this is what our dashboard does. You can see that we've personalised it. We like purple, as you can see. And whilst I've blacked out the patient's names, you can see the sort of report where you get. So the ones near the bottom, the patient has viewed the report that has already been sent to them. The ones in the grey, we're waiting for the photographs of the patients to still be uploaded. And the 3 at the top are new patients where their photographs are available and we need to go in there and take a look at the photographs and write their report for them. This is the sort of thing that we've done. We've customised our treatment list so that we've created it all specifically for the treatments that we offer. Now, this is obviously not just limited to braces, to brace treatment. You can, as I showed before, use it for oral hygiene, so we still link in the oral hygiene options. We use bonding, we use the whitening options, but you can see here that you can do it for implants, onlays, all sorts of different things that you could use in any dental capacity. And so what we know now is that this whole concept, this whole package that we are able to offer through dental monitoring has completely changed our patient journey. And the remote monitoring has allowed us to really just personalise and customise the treatment that we are offering the patients. And we have created this as the new norm, certainly within our Invisalign patients. And following COVID, I can't see us going back and not doing the same thing with our fixed patients. As I said, there has to be a pinch point that creates the change. And we've been faffing around and umming and ahhing for ages about whether to put our fixed patients on. But now they're on, they won't be coming off because we see the benefits. We've stopped seeing all these new changes as a barrier. We're all resistant to change, it's human nature, but once the change is forced upon you and you see the benefits that that can reap, suddenly change is not so scary anymore. And so our patients are given one of these scan boxes when they first start their treatment. And we do know that whilst you can take the photographs with the retractors, the quality of the photographs that are coming through these scan boxes where the patient's phone is being held for them are so much better. They're so much better, they can be used for so much more detail and to so much more accuracy when we are monitoring their treatment. And what we know from studies that have been done is that remote monitoring provides a level of care and attention that the naked human eye just cannot do. Certainly, as I mentioned before, it was about 3 weeks before we jumped on the photo light option, where we thought we could simply just ask our patients to send in their photographs. And so we were asking them to take photographs, we were assessing them ourselves, and it was labour intensive, not just to look at them and report back to them, but then to upload those and keep those records in a centralised place on the software system. It was inefficient. And what we know, and what I knew already from using dental monitoring, is that the AI aspect of this allows us to do so much more in the time that we've got. And let's not forget that during this period of time, certainly in my practice, we were low on manpower. We had to maximise our efficiencies, and we had to make sure our patient treatment did not suffer either clinically or on a personal level. And so studies show that for every 500 patients that you monitor, it takes about 3 minutes to have a look at those photographs, report on them, do what you need to do. And that's about 25 hours of what we call a DMC, our DM Champs time in our practice. That is my nurse, she does a fabulous job. But using the AI option allows there to be so much more free time, because the computer is doing all the thinking for you. The portal is centralised area where you can store all the photographs. There is a patient record there that is part of their clinical records that can be utilised to progress their treatment, to monitor their treatment, and to ensure that they stay compliant as well. And so you can see that this differential between a 24-hour utilisation of a staff member's time versus a 5-hour utilisation of a staff member's time allows you to scale up quite quickly what you can do, not just with the time that becomes available in your practice, but also the clinical time that becomes available in your practice. And so then we talk about this concept of own your appointments. So we know that routine physical visits can now be replaced by virtual visits, because we're monitoring our patients every week on dental monitoring. They're not seeing us every 6 weeks or 8 weeks or 10 weeks. Every week we are seeing their teeth and we are looking at what they're doing. And appointments on demand can be scheduled as physical visits, but when not required, they are simply going to be virtual visits. And so this whole concept, like we talked about, owning your appointments only when needed, or as we call it, appointments on demand, means that you can minimise the number of times you physically need to see your patients in the practice quite considerably, so that when you place attachments, you remove attachments, you do IPR, you do a refinement, you finish, you fit. They're the only real times that absolutely guarantee that you will be seeing the patient in the practice. The rest of the time, theoretically, can just be as and when they are required to be seen. And you can see how that would limit the number of essential surgery visits quite rapidly. And the same example in a fixed case, there are certain things, of course, we can't get around about. We need to fit the appliances, we might need to do IPR, we need to do wire changes. Of course, if we've got breakages, we need to repair them, the D-bond retainer fit. But they are, again, the essential appointments. And using dental monitoring, what it will do is it will actually allow you to monitor when a night eye wire, for example, stops being active. So we know that that patient needs to come in at that time. We all know that we bring patients in every 6 to 8 weeks purely out of nothing but habit. We are aware of systems like self-ligating systems, Damon systems, whereby they've allocated the ability to let the wires just work their way through and leave them for longer. And yet we still like to see this regularity of our patients. We don't like them to go unmonitored for a long period of time. But monitoring them does not necessarily equate anymore to a physical appointment. The monitoring can be done remotely. And so how would this change your clinical practice? And I suppose that's the question that we want to ask ourselves. And so I was first introduced to dental monitoring by Dr. Grant Duncan, who is based out in Australia. And he's done a lot of work and he's been a very early adopter of dental monitoring. And he was obviously the first person, like I said, that introduced me to this idea. And of course, my first reaction, as I said earlier as well, was that, but my patients want to come and see me. And I now know that that's not true, which is very upsetting. And so he talked about 180 patients that he had that were undergoing Invisalign treatment, and he divided them into 2 groups, a dental monitoring group and a control group. And what the results rapidly showed was that the patients that are not being monitored have an extended treatment time, simply because they are potentially going weeks where the brace, the appliance is not active. It is simply an interim period between appointments. And actually the ones that are using dental monitoring, we're maximising the efficiency of those cases, and we're bringing patients in when wires are ready to be changed, when aligners are ready to be changed. And so we're not just creating a blanket policy whereby a fixed patient comes in every 6 to 8 weeks, even though we know that biology changes between patients. Physiologically, it changes between visits. We know that some patients can wear their aligners for 2 weeks, some can wear them for 10, some can wear them for 7, but we have to give a blanket policy unless we have this kind of intelligence to monitor the patients on a much more bespoke level and provide that level of feedback to us to allow us to maximise the treatment. And so what we see very, very rapidly is that not only can we reduce the treatment time that we are using in the surgery, but we can actually give patients what they want, which is quicker treatment. Every patient soon wears thin with their patience of wearing a brace. We know that. We talk to them all about it at the beginning of treatment. Will be 12 to 18 months, 18 to 24 months, and by about 6 months, they're like, when will I be finished again? And this is something we manage day to day, but now we can quite confidently say that actually we are maximising the efficiency of your treatment. We are keeping an eye on your teeth all the time. You are not wearing your wires or your aligners any longer than you have to. As soon as something is ready to be done, you make an appointment, you come into the practice, and we can move things forward for you. But this obviously all depends on the evolution of the team and us being able to make those changes. We've already changed so much. We are so used to being chairside, and already we are sitting more time in front of the computers. We are scanning, we are using digital, we are loading and taking photographs, we are monitoring the Invisalign dental site, and even more so in this new world. But certainly what we do know is that our team members have to become much more efficient and more hybrid, actually not just managing patients physically, but also digitally as well, about embracing these new virtual cares and technologies, and also allowing this acceleration of development of this technology within the teams and having dedicated team members that know these systems inside and out. Like my nurse Rachel, she's amazing at this, but she is the go-to person, and we can all make that happen because she has the knowledge to know how to make this work. And so I suppose this is going to be the emerging role in a practice that we've never had before, where somebody, you hire a staff member to literally sit in front of the computer when you have the volume of patients that are doing this, and they are going to be almost like a treatment concierge role, where they're going to be monitoring all the dental monitoring patients and making sure that they're responding to their needs, communicating with them on a personal level, and monitoring their treatment for progress and also for problems. And so I suppose the new world brings the virtual office. And so whereas traditionally this has been our patient journey, we've had free consultation with our TCs, new patient assessments, they then come through, they have their new patient assessment with an orthodontist, they book records, we do a treatment plan and consent, we fit, we do use remote monitoring, like I said, so that's already installed in our journey. And then they're coming in for their physical appointments, the D-bonds, retainer fits and retainer checks. But in the new world, potentially, they can use SmileMate for their TC appointments. They don't need to be coming in for that free consultation. The treatment plan and the consent could be done by Zoom, by a virtual platform. Like I said, we're already using the remote monitoring, so that takes away a few appointments. And as I mentioned as well previously, we've ummed and ahed about the idea of putting our retainer checks on a virtual system as well. So suddenly you can see that the patient journey is much, much more streamlined. And so this is what we would hope that the patient journey would look like in the virtual world, that we would be able to talk to the patients about the benefits of remote monitoring right from the very beginning of their treatment, that they would be aware of the benefits of actually not necessarily having to spend their time and effort coming into the practice. Of course, they all want the evening appointments, the late night appointments, the convenience, but we're providing that convenience in a different way. We're educating them and we're training them on how to scan their teeth. We're making them understand the value of doing that, but we're making sure that the time that they spend physically in the practice is even more valuable to build that relationship and that rapport. And then we are checking up on them weekly when they're actually doing their scans, and we're moving towards a system whereby they're only coming in when they are needed to, so appointments on demand. And ideally, what that means is that while you're not seeing them on every 6 to 8 weeks, you are actually checking in with them. And so you do spend some time in your diary where you sit there and you look through their notes, you look through their scans, and you send them an appointment so they know that you are checking up on them. You send them a Zoom appointment or a virtual consultation if they need to speak to you directly. Otherwise, you're just sending them a quick report about how their progress is going. And then at the end of the treatment, like I mentioned, you're moving on to a retention regime that allows for remote monitoring as well. How long do we spend monitoring our patients on retention and bringing them in simply just to tell them that a retainer's fit? Great. Why can't we do that in a more simplistic and efficient way that helps the patients and helps us as well? And so I hope that this would be the new journey in the new world, and we would be able to harness the technologies and the innovations that have been foisted upon us to some degree during this crisis, but have garnered us to make change and to make the changes in a positive way without losing any value to the patient journey, the communication, and the clinical outcomes that we are able to provide for our patients. Thank you very much, and I'm very happy to take some questions.
I have some questions for you here, Anshu. So the first one is, are you supplying your patients with scan boxes and retractors?
So we haven't been during the COVID period, simply because we've not been able to access them in a quick enough time for us to, we got impatient. We went from doing nothing to wanting to everything to be done the day before. So we haven't during this period, but we always do otherwise, yes. And certainly we will be doing going forward as well, definitely.
Next one is, can you use SmileMate to cut out the treatment coordinator contact point?
I imagine that you can. So I don't know, what do you mean by the role of the treatment coordinator altogether? I would say not. Certainly our treatment coordinator is the one that does the virtual consultations. I do look at the reports, I do look at the photographs, we liaise about those together, but she is the one that does all that follow-up, generates the interest, and obviously creates that first point of the rapport with the patients. But certainly we are planning on eliminating that in the immediate post-COVID period, definitely, as to face-to-face appointment. We will not be asking patients to come in for a free TC consult. We will be trying to do that virtually as much as possible. And like I said, and the video mentioned as well, we've installed the button onto our website. So even if patients inquire by phone, if they inquire by social media, or via email, we direct them back to that SmileMate button on the website, and they submit all their photographs and everything through there. We found it's a great way to keep all of our referrals in one area, and we can keep track of them much better than we were able to before. We find that people love to communicate with us in so many different ways these days: Instagram, Facebook, email, phone, and we just needed one portal, and that was an unexpected benefit to SmileMate that I hadn't really relied upon.
We've got, how is the patient experience of taking the pictures using their mobile phones?
Okay, so that's an interesting question, because we have had mixed reports with that. Certainly I would say 90% of the patients are absolutely fine doing with it. They've got no problem at all. Like I said, we went overnight to putting everybody on photo monitoring light. So overnight, I think we sent out, I can't remember, Gemma, but I think it was about 300-400 patients we put onto photo monitoring light. We maybe had 10 patients that came back to us and needed some help. So they couldn't do it, they were struggling with it, and we just talked them through it, or we did a Zoom consultation with them, and so they're absolutely fine with it. We inevitably had about, I think, 3 or 4, maybe 5, 6 patients who were just like, no, I'm sorry, I can't do it. And you could tell that they hadn't even really tried. They'd literally email you, go, sorry, I can't do it. And you'd be like, well, I'll explain it to you, tell you how to do it. And a minute later, like, no, I tried, I can't. They clearly haven't tried. They're clearly just not invested in doing it. And that's absolutely fine as well. That's their choice. We sell the value of it to them. We tell them how important it is for us to be able to monitor their teeth while we can't see them, but we can't force them to do it. So I would say, like I said, the majority of our patients have been absolutely fine with it, and it hasn't been a problem at all. Certainly when we have patients in the building, when we fit their braces, we spend quite a long time allowing them to get used to using the scan boxes. We talk them through it. We send them, DM have loads of videos on YouTube. We send them the videos if they get stuck. And so we do teach our patients how to use those scan boxes, and we find, just like when you do patient instructions after you've fitted braces, the time spent doing that is time that is well rewarded in the long run, because you get the good quality photographs back.
How long is it reasonable to go without physically seeing the patient?
Oh, sorry, I thought you meant during COVID. I was like, really, that's not down to me to decide. So it's interesting that you say that. So certainly in Australia, Grant Duncan, for example, has patients where he will see them at fit. He will do the IPR and the attachments all in the same visit with his liner cases, and potentially not see them right until the very end. Now, I have to be honest, I'm not brave enough to do that. And so certainly we traditionally have always fitted the patients, 6 weeks later fitted their attachments, and then we have done appointments on demand or as needed after that. I think that very, very much depends on patient to patient. It was never my intention for really to go longer than 10 or 12 weeks while we first introduced this. But interestingly, I have had one patient who clearly just had a whole bunch of absolute fine. She kept moving on through. She came back towards the end when she ran out of aligners. She pretty much got through a whole treatment and it was perfect. And I'd literally seen her to fit her brace, put her attachments on. She came back and she was ready for a D-box. Now, like I said, I hadn't intentionally done that. I don't feel like I'm brave enough necessarily to do that, but it goes to show that actually it can be done. And I think what the reality with that is actually just learning to trust the system. And once you learn to trust the system and you know where it can benefit you the most and you know that your treatment plans are exactly how they should be, then theoretically you can go from start to end with not monitoring at all. And certainly there are clinicians across the world that are doing that. So it depends on your own risk profile, I suppose.
I think we'll take one more question and then we'll have a really short break for the 8 p.m. clap, if that's okay with everybody. So last question is, how cost effective is it? It seems like a lot of money per patient.
Well, no, absolutely. And so certainly that was one of my barriers at the beginning where I thought, well, crikey, we've got the scan box and the retractors and obviously the cost of the patients and the treatment. But actually what I would say is that it has added value to what we do for our patients, because I feel like it's an extra service that we're able to offer for our patients. So they like the fact that we are keeping an eye on their treatment much more closely. I thought that they would find the fact that we weren't seeing them as often as being shortchanged on what we were offering them, but actually they see the benefit of this far more. And I think it's within our heads where we feel that actually the value is in the patient seeing us. And certainly that was, I think, one of the problems that we all have somewhere along the journey. We're all slightly kind of control freaks, but the cost has certainly not been outweighed by the benefit. The benefit is definitely been far greater. Like I said, you can see the sort of testimonials that patients write back. They love the app, they love the convenience of it. Like I said, patients don't love seeing us, but they love us seeing them. And that, getting my head around that concept has been the game changer for me. And I think that puts the cost into pale comparison when you know that actually you're providing really, really good, accurate treatment for your patients.
Okay, so next question. Without Scanbox, how are patients taking photos and what is the quality like?
So without the scan box, the patients are currently taking their photographs, normally with their fingers, like they show them on the SmileMate, or like I said, we've been sending out those blue disposable retractors from Dental Directory just in this interim period while we've been stuck, or we've simply been sending them the DM retractors. So they haven't got the scan box, but they've just got the DM retractors. And part of the issue with that really is just the feasibility of posting out that many scan boxes during this stage, where we wanted to get everybody onto the photo monitoring light as quickly as possible. But once that's over, like I said, everybody will get a scan box and the proper retractors, just because it does make it easier for the patient. It's not just the quality of the photographs, it's the ease for which the patient can then literally be holding their teeth, taking their photographs and getting it all at the same time. And so the quality of the photographs, the ease of the patients, the scan boxes are definitely the way to go forward. But certainly I've been surprised with the quality of the photographs that we've got and we've been getting. But what you tend to find is you're not able to get a really good view of the buccal areas. So normally if patients are taking the photographs during this stage themselves, I find that we get a really good photograph until about sort of the 4s or 5s, but we never get the 6s on any of the photographs. Whereas you do that with the scan box and the retractors, you get the 6s and the 7s on there as well. So you're just able to get a much clearer picture of what's going on in patients' mouths with the retractors.
Apart from ortho, what else have you found SmileMate beneficial for?
So interestingly, we only really do ortho, but I certainly have spoken to colleagues who've been using SmileMate for implants, for dentures, well, for every aspect of dentistry, really. I mean, we use it for, within the practice, we've been using it for bonding. So patients have been saying, you know, with incisal bonding, whitening, certainly as well. So I don't think there is a limit to what you can use it for. And so that's what makes it accessible to every aspect of dentistry, not just orthodontics. And Gemma and I were having a conversation earlier as well, that actually it will notify you of any caries on a patient's tooth as well. So it's great just to spot the problems that are happening as well. I've been quite surprised because I was concerned that we would just get patients, all sorts of patients sending in pictures, you know, 3 teeth, loads of perio, but actually we've been getting some quite good quality leads. But certainly if there's any buildup of calculus, if there's any oral hygiene insufficiencies, it can point all of those out. And the great thing is that we can show the patients on the photographs as well, and we can advise them and tell them how to monitor and maintain and manage the problems that they've been having as well. So I think it's got unlimited potential and use.
Do you keep space in the appointment book for people you need to see soon as a result of their photos? If the book's full, there's no benefit to me to use this as I can't see them any faster.
So I think it's if you put this into practice in its whole entirety, you will find that your book will not be that full because you'll be seeing fewer patients. And so theoretically, by definition, you have space in your diary. Certainly in practices where they've had this implemented for a long period of time, what they are showing is that they can very rapidly increase the number of patients that they can start each year without providing any more surgery space. And so it's not just the simplicity of the photos and fitting those patients in, it's the whole journey that allows you to create more patient volume in less surgery space. So you can't just take one part of it in its sort of isolation, it's the entirety of the journey. But certainly we do have spaces in our diary where patients could be seen the following week, the next day, not always, but certainly within the next 2 or 3 days. Yes, I mean, of course, some patients would argue that it takes away the degrees of freedom for appointment times, but certainly we have to remind them that that is outweighed against the fact that they possibly had to come in one less time anyway. And so I think it's just understanding that there's benefits to both parties to make sure the efficiencies happen in this way.
Do you work with an orthodontic therapist, and how do you use them during COVID?
My orthodontic therapist. So interestingly, both my therapists are employed by my private side of the practice. And so one of them is furloughed and one of them is helping a little bit with this sort of stuff, but actually doing nothing to do with orthodontic therapy and not a lot of clinical stuff at all, to be quite honest. So I'm not quite sure what the direction of that question is, but I certainly know practitioners that are using their therapists to be using dental monitoring, and that's solely what they're doing throughout this period of time. They are monitoring the patients that are sending the photographs in. I personally have chosen to take a look at those all myself because I'm a control freak. I wanted just to send a message to the patients, and I think they've seen the value in that. And I wanted to make sure that I knew where all the patients were going to be for when we come back, because we went on to the monitoring later, so to speak, so we're already 3 weeks into the crisis. I know that those patients will probably only need to be scanned 3-4 times before they potentially are coming back again. And I want to be able to know how they're going to come back and plan that return back into the diary when we restart again.
Would you charge new patients for an initial consultation through the website?
Oh, that's got nothing to do with this at all. Would I charge for a new patient consultation? So as in a click of a button, without seeing photographs? Probably not, no. But via a virtual consultation and through SmileMate, yes, we have been doing. Yes, we have indeed, definitely been doing that, yeah.
I've got a nice one here from Stacey. Great to hear that Helix is thriving during COVID. I've seen lots of posts on social media and just wanted to say huge congrats. Thanks so much.
Oh, thank you so much. Oh, that's lovely. I really appreciate that, Stacey. Thank you.
Next one is, do you foresee DM for your NHS patients as well?
So honestly, before COVID, we hadn't really had an awful lot of experience with it with the fixed patients. And so I hadn't really foreseen not the value of doing that. It's always that thing, it's that pinch point to make you change. It just seemed like a really big decision to make that leap to put all the fixed patients onto DM. But certainly I can see the benefits in doing that, definitely. And I think now that I've been forced in some ways to start putting our fixed patients onto the light option, and I can see how that would work and I can see how that evolves in the patient journey, certainly yes, I would consider it. Yeah, definitely. And I think especially because we know in our NHS patients we're looking for different things. We're not necessarily looking at the efficiencies in the treatment, but certainly we're looking for the problems. We've all got patients that come in and they say, oh yeah, my bracket broke 2 weeks after I came to see you last time. You think, well, you've been there for 4 weeks and actually the treatment hasn't progressed at all. And so I see there being a value in a different way, in a cohort of patients that are possibly less compliant than our adult private patients, although we certainly have patients there in that cohort that aren't that compliant. But the NHS patients, I think, would be great for the oral hygiene, for the breakages, and I think we can definitely create treatment efficiencies by preempting those problems. And so patients aren't just coming back on this cycle of 6 to 8 weeks just because that's what we've always done, or sometimes in the NHS practice just coming back when we can fit them into the diary, but we're actually making sure they're coming back when their treatment can actually be moved on to the next stage, or it needs to be interrupted and breakages need to be repaired or what have you. So yes, I think so.
And then the one final question that we have is, do your patients pay a deposit for the scan box you provide them with for taking photos?
So it's interesting, we did have this debate within the practice, and obviously, yes, potentially you could reuse them because they're cleanable and all the rest of it, but actually we have not gone down the route of asking for a deposit for the scan box, simply because for us, we saw the value of them monitoring more important than the barrier that might potentially occur for them having to pay for it. So of course, yes, you could incorporate that into your fee. That's one way of going about doing it. But no, we have not. No, certainly we haven't. But there are patients, you know, we have talked about the option of possibly giving the patients a rebate if they return their scan boxes. But as yet, we've not implemented any of those options. They're just ideas in our head. So no, we don't charge them for the scan boxes. We see that as an added extra as part of the treatment.
Great, that's all the questions. Thank you, Anshu.
No, you're very welcome. Thank you for having me. And I hope you all look at dental monitoring as an option in your practices and see how that could change your patient journey in this new virtual era. And stay safe, everybody.